How's everybody doing? Good. Great. Doing good. Thank you. My wife feels the same way. She's not here, though, so. All right, if you want, turn your Bibles to John chapter 6. We're going to be there today, eventually. Who watched the game last night? How many are disappointed? All right, well. Okay, cool. That's all I'm going to say. Well, there you go. To be honest with you, I had the thought, like Friday, and I was like, man, that game's got to be coming up pretty soon. And I Googled it, and it said the next day. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. And kind of forgot about it till like 6 o'clock or something last night, and we don't have the ability to watch it anyway, but I don't think I missed much, but that's just my opinion. So whatever. Let's get on with the word, right? All right. John chapter 6. I kind of want to give just a little bit of a quick review on like why we're here this morning, like why we're going to be studying this verse. So if I could encourage you guys for the baptism services that happen, I would really encourage you guys to come. Last Sunday, I was touched and I felt the move of God before the water stuff even happened. It was just being in the presence of God, right? And the presence of God is here this morning, like right now. And I don't know if it's right to say this or not, but it just seems a little bit different on Sunday nights, right? And the reality is like I thought a lot about Sunday night this past week, and there was really nothing that was like super different about it, right? It was just the music hit different for some reason, and the message that was, that Pastor John gave was not like a super profound message, we'll say, but it was something that just hit right for me at that moment. And it kind of got me thinking and pushed me into an avenue of doing something that I really don't want to do. And I had to confront a few things this week, and I haven't been perfect at it, but I've tried, right? Well, I tell you all that to say this. Pastor John preached out of Luke chapter 6. And this week, I had it in my head, well, at the beginning of this week, starting Monday, I had it in my head that it was John chapter 6. I just thought Pastor John always preached out of the book of John, so it was John 6, right? And I'm not the smartest tool in the shed or on the chandelier, but what I have found was I had to read through 71 verses to figure out that was not what John was talking about on Sunday night, right? But I believe that God has a plan and a purpose for everything, and there is a reason that God put me there and not in Luke. One of the things that God has been pushing in my life is my attitude. And I know that I'm the only one here with a bad attitude, okay? And so this message is probably just for me. And if you have a good attitude this morning, I guess you're a better Christian than I am, right? And that's fine. But I believe that God showed me this verse for a reason. And it's actually going to be verse 66 is where we're going to start. But before we do that, I want to kind of fill you in a little bit because I'm a really terrible reader, actually. And I don't want to read all 66 verses to give you the context. So I'm just going to kind of break it down and give you the Andrew Beduhn version of what this chapter is saying. So, you're welcome. The beginning of it starts as Jesus feeds the 5,000. How many guys know that story? Okay. Later on, it talks about Jesus walking on the water. Another cool and great story, right? There's so much in just this verse, or just this chapter, that you could preach off. Like, literally, you could probably spend 3 months just preaching on just this chapter alone. I'm not going to, but you could. And then he moves into a passage about being the bread of life, right? And I was reading all that, and I'm like, man, that's all really good too. And then I read the verse that kind of shakes me to my core, and that's verse 66. But just for some more context, there was 3 sets of people that Jesus was talking about in this book. There was the Jews, who were the unbelievers, the people that rejected God, the people that wanted nothing to do with God, right? To be honest with you, in this life that we're living right now, we still run across those same people. And those people are the ones that I feel the most hurt for, the people that just totally reject God and everything they have. Maybe it's out of pride, spite, whatever. Those are the people that tear my heart up the most. The second group of people were the 12. You know, Andrew, James, John. They were the second group of people. Those were the guys that were the heroes of our faith, right? Almost per se like the founding fathers, right? That was the second group of people. The third group of people are labeled here as the disciples. Now I want to separate the 12 from the disciples, right? The disciples in this passage are basically just you and I. They're the people that woke up in the morning, got dressed, put their pants on, and just went after it, right? The disciples in this passage are no different than you and I. They came to experience a real God, and they wanted to walk like him, talk like him, and be like him. If that wasn't your intent this morning, then I don't know why you're here, right? But that's what these 12 were, or that's what the disciples in this book were wanting to be. They wanted to be like Jesus. But in verse 66, it was one of the most disturbing verses that I read, and it was something that just popped out to me all of a sudden. And I guess just to keep it in tune with Halloween being scary, let's read it. It says, after this, many of his disciples turned their back and no longer walked with him. There was something that happened that made the people step out of fellowship with God. And I don't know about you, but to me, that is one of the scariest places you could ever be. And if you're not careful, you can go down that road a lot quicker than you ever thought. There was something that triggered them that said, can't do it. Got to stop. I believe that this verse this morning comes as a warning to us to say, stay in fellowship with God. What was the thing that got them out of fellowship? What was the one thing that just rocked them to their core that they couldn't take it? I mean, they literally stayed there and watched Jesus feed the 5,000. Okay? They literally, some of them stayed there and watched Jesus walk on water. If you experienced all of that, what could make you turn your back on God? What could make you stop? Maybe turn your back on God was not the right thing to say. What could make you stop following him? And it might be only for a season. But what I'm saying is if you stop, it's a slippery slope, and the world will eat you up. And it'll eat you up faster than you ever thought possible. What was that one thing? if you go back up to verse 60, it explains it pretty well. It says, there's a lot of different translations. I'm going to just read to you what mine says. Yours may be different. It says, when many of his disciples heard it, they said, "This is hard to hear. I don't understand it." This is hard to hear, and I don't understand it. Could it be something as simple as the people walked away because they didn't understand what God was doing? Now, I know that you guys are way more spiritual than me, okay? And I know that you guys have never asked yourself these questions in life. Questions like, God, where are you? How could you let this happen? I know that you guys are super spiritual and never thought that, right? To be honest with you, I don't really pay that much attention to the news and anything like that, but every morning when I go to work, I have to log into the computer, and I'm too lazy to put the icon for my email up on the main screen, so I have to get on the internet and do it that way because I like doing extra steps. Why not? So I always have to go, and I think it's like Yahoo News or something. I don't know what it is, but it's up there. And there was a story that caught my eye. Most of the time it just tells me who died, which is weird. I don't know why that is, but there was a story that caught my eye like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it was some about the hurricanes that went through, and it was more specifically the second one. Now, I've never been in the middle of a hurricane. Has there ever been anybody here that's been in one? Okay, no, because we live in Michigan, right? We're smart. So, I've never been a part of that, right? So, like storms don't necessarily scare me, unless I see a tornado coming right towards me, then I'll probably be scared. But I've always had the mindset, like, I don't care if it's a really small hurricane or a really big one. I'm probably going to leave the state, and I'm probably going to go at least 3 or 4 states over, right? And just till it passes, and I would hope that I could have that luxury, right? Realistic? Probably not, but that's just what a Michigander thinks, right? I mean, am I the only one that thinks that? Or okay, good. Thank you, church. It was a little quiet, kind of freaked me out, so thought maybe this is just for me up here, okay, which is fine. Maybe it is, but that's kind of like my thought, right? And so I was told, and I actually had to Google it because Google is amazing. I was told that when the path of the, say this is the path of the hurricane, right? Like right down this middle aisle, right here, right? Amy said, of course. This is the hurricane, right? All you really have to be is like 8 to 10 miles away from the center of it. And yeah, you're going to experience a hard rain, but you're more than likely going to be all right. Well, I don't know about you, but 8 miles isn't far enough for me, right? Okay? Like I said, I want to be a couple states away. So I say all that to say this. This story that I read online, it was about, I can't even remember what kind of warehouse or plant this was, but the boss decided that he was going to be pretty cool and make all of his employees come into work on the day that the storm was to hit. There was 32 employees, and ironically, the boss decided to call off that night, right? But he made all of his guys come in. Now, we're not going to focus on that part of the story. I just wanted to tell you that to get you angry, right? So, because we're going to work on our attitude, all right? So I just wanted to give you that, all right? So, anyway, there's 32 people in this warehouse. And the storm does not stay on the path that it was supposed to, and it actually shifted and moved. And it basically flooded this warehouse out, and the mountains that were kind of surrounding this warehouse kind of collapsed and caved in and kind of trapped all those people in this building. And it flooded, and everybody in that building died. Now, terrible story, right? How can God let that happen? I would like to say that like 10 years ago, that story wouldn't have bothered me, which seems kind of heartless, and I don't mean it that way. But being a father, it hurts. There's kids that don't have a father anymore. There's a mom that is going to try to figure out how to pay funeral expenses. There's a mom who's a single mom now, who doesn't know what's going to happen. Why, God? I don't know. I don't understand. I'm verse 60. I don't know. I don't know why it happened. But what I do know is you can't stay in that spot. Because the longer you stay in that spot, the quicker you can step out of fellowship with God. Have you ever asked questions like, why my family? Why my kids? Why my marriage? Have you ever asked the question, are you real, God? Are you real? Why are you letting me go through this? Have you ever asked that? I know I have. Don't stay there. If you get nothing else out of today, I want you to write this next part down. It's not the events that will push you away from God. It's not the stuff that happens in your life that will push you away from God and everything that He has to offer you. It's not the events. It's your attitude. You didn't want to come to church this morning to get beat up, did you? Oh, just a warning, it gets worse. It's not the events that will push you away from God. It's only your attitude. Thomas Jefferson has a quote, and I heard this like a super long time ago, and kind of forgot about it, honestly. And then the Lord kind of gave it back to me. It says, nothing can stop a man with the right mental attitude from achieving his goals. Nothing on earth can help the man with the wrong mental attitude. I think he kind of knew what he was talking about there. Right? My father, when he raised us, one of his common sayings that he said to my brother and my sister was, you need to adjust your attitude. Never me, no. I was always good. I didn't get the attitude till later. No, but like as a mom or a dad, have you ever had to say that to your kids? You need to adjust your attitude, right? Never? Okay. Again, I'm the only one here, so that's cool. So, this morning, I guess since I'm a dad, might as well, right? I believe the Lord is wanting to give us some attitude adjustments that we can take in our life on this next week. And I really struggled with this first one. But I want you to listen. I want you to hold on. I want you to not leave or get too upset, because there is a promise at the end of it. Okay? Okay, church? Okay, all right. Just want to make sure. You said okay, so that means you can't leave, right? Ready? First one is this. Nobody owes me a thing, not even God. What? Nobody owes me a thing, not even God. How many of you guys are scared? Wondering where that's going. Romans 11:34. It says, "For who can know the Lord's thoughts? Who knows enough to give him advice?" ? And who has given so much that he needs to pay it back? ? For everything comes from him and exists by his power and is intended for his glory, and all glory to him forevermore. Nobody owes me a thing, not even God. I kind of fear as a church, and I'm not saying this church. When I say it as a church, I'm talking a church as a whole in the United States of America, right? I fear that we've adapted a similar mentality to the world, and that's one of entitlement, and almost like a microwave society culture, where we ask for something and expect it immediately, right? And the thing that scares me the most is I often wonder if we believe that, like, I know that we don't believe this, but I wonder if we kind of do in a little bit, is if we believe that God is really our servant. Not just our Lord and Savior, the one who gave us life, the one that we get to spend heaven with, but almost like a servant, to where we only go to him when we need something, and when we ask him for something and he doesn't give it to us the way that he wants or that we want, we get upset, then start asking these questions of, why, God, like, where are you at? And then we start going down this rabbit trail of, like, God, are you real? We start going down those paths. God is not your servant, and he doesn't owe you anything. I wrote this down. I want to read it word for word. I want us to get a hold of the mindset that God has done more for us than we deserve in 100 lifetimes. And if he never does one more thing, that's okay, because we get heaven. We get heaven. By the grace of God and the blood of Jesus, heaven is ours if we accept him. If he does nothing else for us, so be it. He owes me nothing. I owe him everything. Now, I told you there was a little bit of a promise at the end, but honestly, it went a lot better than I thought, so I might skip this promise. I literally thought possibly the pitchforks might come out. If Pastor John was here, there might have been a question, but he's not, so whatever. No, I'm kidding. Here's another thing. I say all that, but I would also want to encourage you that just because we have the heart of saying that nobody owes us anything, not even God, that doesn't dismiss the fact that you stop praying to him and asking him for things. Right? If you need a healing in your body, I want this caveat to be, if you need healing in your body, I don't want you to say, well, Andrew said don't pray to him. That's not what I said at all. What I'm saying is he owes us nothing, but he can give us what we need. I was in the shower this morning, and I had this random thought. Get that image out of your head. Anyway, I was in there, and I was thinking about the message and kind of like how it was going to work out and everything like that. And for some reason, I thought about being the responsibility of a father. And in my household, it might work different for you guys, I don't know. But for my household, I am responsible, and I take the responsibility for my family, right? I am the one that provides what they need. Not what they want, but what they need. There is a huge difference there. And as a father, it's really hard to see my son and daughter in the store when they go down the toy aisle and want every single toy there. But what they don't realize is Daddy's budget is not that big. If it was that big, we need a bigger house because I buy them every stinking toy there, right? Because I love them that much. But I'm also going to give them what they need. I'm going to provide a house for them that's somewhat warm. I'm going to give them clothes on their back. Even if they're hand-me-downs, I'm going to put clothes on their back because that's what God has called me to be. That is the provider instinct in me. That's what I owe my family. That's what I owe my kids. I owe them to bring them to church and for them to walk in line with Christ and what he wants for their life. That is my responsibility as a father and as a parent. That is what God has called me to do. I don't owe it to my kids to give them everything they need or want. I owe it to my kids to give them everything they need. Attitude adjustment number 1 was, nobody owes me a thing, not even God. Number 2, I thought number 1 was going to be the hardest one, but we'll see. Number 2, stop whining. Suck it up. Thank you. Has God ever put you guys in a place that you didn't want to be? How many of you guys are in a place that you don't want to be right now? And I'm not saying church, because everybody wants to be at church, right? Right? Okay, we're not that unspiritual, I think. Years ago, I was one of the youth leaders here, and we decided to do a trip to Cedar Point. It scares me. I was trying to think. It's probably like 15 years ago, which is crazy because I didn't think I was that old. But anyway, we go to Cedar Point, and I need Tara's help here for a minute because I'm pretty sure you went to Cedar Point with us, right? You did not. Okay, somebody did. Anyway, we'll carry on. We went to Cedar Point, and I had, I believe, 3 girls and 1 guy in my car plus me. I was the one driving. And one of the, I'm just going to try to lighten the crowd a little bit instead of like get y'all super depressed on the points. So one of the girls had never been to Cedar Point before. She had never been on any sort of roller coaster ride before, and she was like 12, 13 years old. So why not start at Cedar Point? So we went there, and the trip started out phenomenally. We left here at the church super early and drove down there. It was a good time. And she drank, she had a 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew and a bunch of candy. And she drank the whole 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew from the time we left to about an hour before Cedar Point. Okay, so that tells you how quick she drank that thing, right? And me being young and stupid and not thinking, I didn't think about the ramifications of all that. And we roll up, and she said that she had to go to the bathroom. I'm like, well, you're going to have to deal with it because we're like an hour away, and there's like 4 cars behind us, and I'm leading, and I'm just not pulling over. So that's kind of where I was at with it, right? And so she's like, no, I have to go. I'm like, well, seriously, you're going to have to wait. So I look up after I say that, and I see just a bunch of red lights. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Traffic came to a dead stop on the expressway, and she has to pee. And I'm like, she got to the point where she was literally crying because she had to pee so bad. And I'm just kind of secretly laughing, right? So I'm like, what do we do? So there was an exit, and this exit was like packed, right? And I could see in the very far distance, there's like a construction group up there. They were working on the bridge, and I saw a porta-john. But everybody was getting off this exit to get out of the backup because there was an accident right before the bridge that everybody was working on. And it was a dead stop for at least 20 minutes. So I'm like, okay, well, what do we do? So I finally felt some compassion, so I pulled over to the side, and I floored it up the ramp, blew by all these people, and we get to these porta-johns. What I didn't know is that the door for the porta-john was on the opposite side of where we were driving. So when we pull around, there was a line of like 15 people waiting to get into that porta-john. So I got out of the car, I opened the door, I'm like, good luck, I'll wait here. She was not too happy. So she's like begging these people that she has to pee. Like she made a mistake, she has to pee, she needs to cut. And I'm just sitting there like kind of embarrassed. I'm like, that's your problem, pee your pants. Like I don't know what to say. Like, you know what I mean? Like maybe I'm no heart, I don't know. That's where I was at. So finally she asked for help. So I'm like, okay. So I went up to the people, and I'm like, hey, she's a kid. She was dumb. She drank a lot of pop. She needs to pee. Can she please cut? Like, seriously, I'm sorry. We got her off at like another 6 or 7 people because some people had a bigger heart than I did that day, right? And so she finally was able to go to the bathroom. There was no accidents. It was good to go. So Cedar Point comes. I'm not a big ride goer. I am more of a person observer. Okay, that's why I go to these things. So we're there, and we're riding, and I am obviously this big, and she was this big. But yet, for some reason, we decided that we were going to team up together and ride this ride. And there was one single bar that went across. Well, my gut is so far out that she had a gap this far, and it was like indenting my gut, right? Got the good image? Okay. We start going on this ride, and she asked me, does this thing go upside down? And I said, I hope not, because you're falling out. She starts crying. And we were like 3/4 or more of the way back, and I realized that it does go upside down because the front car just went upside down. And I know that we're coming next in like 0.3 seconds, so I grab a hold of anything I can grab a hold of, which was her hair, and I hold on to her for dear life. And I said, next time we go around, I will try to hold on to you better. It was just all I had. And she's like, I know, right? So that's kind of how it went. So it gets better. She decided to go on another ride with me. Why? No idea. But she did. This one, though, she made sure that it didn't go upside down. Well, on that ride, she got a little sick. And remember that 2-liter bottle that we had? Well, there was just a little bit extra in the bottom, and she thought that she could drink it for some reason, so she brought it in with her. I told her to leave it in the car, but she brought it in. I'm glad that she didn't, listen to me. It was the only thing that we had in the backpack. She threw up in the 2-liter bottle. Now, I want to tell you, it takes skill to throw up in a 2-liter bottle. That hole in the top is really, really small. Okay? I'll come back to that in just a second. So, she throws up, and it's just about quitting time. I purposely did not eat. I know that's a shocker. I didn't eat because I didn't want to do what she did. So we get ready to leave. And this is why I thought Tara was with me. But she says she wasn't. Or in another car behind me. So, maybe it was a different event. I don't know. We'll find out in a minute. So, I ate. And I ate a lot because I was hungry. So, we get in the car, and my stomach just starts turning. And I don't throw up. I hate throwing up. I just hate it. I don't like it. I just don't do it. I will force myself not to. Like, that's what I am. There was no stopping this. And I thank God that we rinsed that 2-liter bottle out because that's all we had in that car. And I'm like, if she can do it, I can do it. So I threw up in the car, and whoever was behind me from this church, their kid was in that car with me. And they seen me driving erratically, and they called me while I was driving. Now, as a parent, understand. I get it now. Back then, I didn't, and I was a little upset with their tone. Not going to lie. And they said, word for word, I will never let my kid ride with you again. And my words were, I was throwing up in a 2-liter bottle, okay? Give me some leeway. You try doing that while you're driving, okay? So, we never went to Cedar Point again. Haven't been back. It was a place that God put me that I didn't want to be. And honestly, I think the girl thought the same way because she had me. Even if you're in those spots, God can use you. And it might not be right then and there, but it might be some random guy telling the same story, getting people to laugh 15 years down the road. You might not understand it right then and there, but God can use the events and where you're at some point. God is always good. Attitude adjustment number 3, and we'll close out with this. It says, do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. Man, these are harsh, right? It's funny, that same girl, she was a cheerleader, and I think I've told this story before, but I tried to make it a point to get involved in the teenagers' lives outside of youth group, right? And when it came to like sporting events or basketball or anything like that, wrestling or whatever, I tried to be there just to support them. I also like took them to Taco Bell, McDonald's, and all that stuff and whatever. Well, this girl asked if I could come to one of her cheerleading events, and to be honest with you, I was like young, single. I'm like, party? No, I'm just kidding. But no, I was like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like, I don't know anything about cheerleading, but yeah, I'll be there because, you know, I want to support you, right? And so I get there, and I'm just like, holy cow, they are serious about, like, being fake. But anyway, I don't know. It was like really weird to me. And did all that or whatever, and I thought it was just going to be a one-and-done thing. And then the girl come up to me, and she's like, thank you for coming and all this. And she's like, hey, can you come next week because those are like the finals or whatever. And this was all on a Saturday, and it was like in late January to early February time frame, right? I'm like, yeah, no problem. You know, I'll be there. She's like, okay, because it's in like Saginaw or something. Like I went to Weberville to watch this one, which is like right next to the house, right? And she's like, oh, good, because this one's in like Saginaw or something. I'm like, oh, well, you could have led with that, right? You know, that's kind of what I'm thinking. But I told her I was going to be there, so I got to hold true to my word, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. So fast forward, I don't know if any of you guys struggle with this, but forgetfulness, right? So that Saturday morning, it was like perfect. It was January, February. There was 6 inches of snow on the ground. It was like 38 degrees at 8 a.m. It was going to be like a high of like 42 that day, all right? And I just woke up knowing that that day was going to be a great rabbit hunting day. I just knew it, like deep down. And so I called my brother, and I'm like, hey, we got to go. He's like, I thought the same thing. Let's go. So we went. And I can tell you exactly where I was and exactly the time that I remembered that I had something else planned that day. I can tell you where I was standing in the woods. And I can tell you what time, because it was 11:02 and her competition started at 11, and she called me at 11:02 wanting to know where I was at. And she was one of the first ones. So no matter what I did, I was going to miss it, right? And she called, and I'm like, listen, I am so sorry. I forgot all about it. Like, it was not intentional, okay? I just got really excited to go rabbit hunting, right? It was like, you should understand. And I thought that, honest mistake, things were going to be okay. Like, it was totally fine, right? Everybody makes mistakes. Well, that was Saturday, and youth group then was Tuesday nights. And so she didn't come to church Sunday, I don't believe. I think it was Tuesday she came to youth group. And so I'm like, hey, how did it go and all this stuff? And she didn't talk to me. Like nothing. And I'm like, well, I kind of talk soft sometimes. So I'm like, hey, how did it go? And she just turned her head and walked away. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of weird. So I didn't think much of it, right? Well, that kept eating away at me. And so finally I took her into the separate room away from all the other people, and I'm like, listen, I am sorry. I did not think. I should have planned better. I'm sorry that I wasn't there for you when I needed to be. And she just starts bawling and, giving this sob story. Now, was she overreacting? Probably. The point of the matter is I told her I was going to be there, and I wasn't. And so this was the time that I failed to do point number 3. I see this girl every once in a while. I try to stay in contact with her the best I can, but honestly, right now, it's like whenever one of the youth kids has a wedding, I'll see her there. And that's about really the only contact I have. She reached out to me a while ago, like 2-3 years ago, and that was about it. And I don't know if that time missing her is what ruined our relationship, or if it was the roller coaster ride. But do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. It's not just all about you. It affects others too. I want to read one more verse here, and we'll close. Psalms 62:6. It says, He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress where I will not be shaken. I may not understand. I may not understand the hows and the whys or the what if. But I get heaven because of Jesus. And that's all that matters. There's nothing else that matters. I will not be shaken. The world can come tumbling down around me. And if today's my last day, I get heaven tomorrow. And it's worth it. There's so many people that are missing the opportunity. And that's the part that breaks my heart. I get heaven. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress where I will not be shaken, no matter what happens in life. He's everything. Would you stand? Dear Jesus, I thank you for today. Thank you for your word. God, I don't even need to ask for hands because I know everybody's said the questions, said the thoughts. Like, why me? Why now? Why this? God, I just pray that you would reveal yourself to us in new ways. That we would not stay in an attitude of resentment towards you, but that we would fully embrace you for everything that you are. That we would grow to love you. And God, we don't have to understand you. We don't have to live our lives in that thought. God, I just pray that you would let us trust you and know that your ways are not our ways. That you have yesterday, today, and tomorrow in your hands. And that's good enough for us. God, we love you and we thank you. Be with us this day. In Jesus' name, amen. You guys are good to go. If you need prayer or anything, there will be people up here to pray. If not, we'll see you at the trunk or treat.